warm welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, ET Now's daily platform for the Indian micro, small and medium enterprise sector. On this series, it's our endeavor to celebrate entrepreneurship, bring you expert advice from renowned business leaders and help you grow your business. The success of any organization is a direct function of the people who are part of it. So today on MSME Dialogues, we're exploring the various facets of HR practices for a small business. Joining us from Mumbai is Basuri Datta, partner at Great Place to Work Institute, Nishchay Suri, partner and head of People and Change at KPMG, Elizabeth Nanda, Chief of Human Resources and Training at Fab India, and Rajneesh Singh, founder of Simply HR. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for joining us today on Leaders of Tomorrow. Attracting and retaining quality talent is perhaps one of the biggest challenges for any startup or small enterprise. Elizabeth, you've been with Fab India ever since it started out, back 10 years back when it was 200 people, and now today when it's 3,000 people in the company. What have your challenges been along the way, and how have your HR practices evolved?
Yes, I've been there with them since 2005, when we were, like you said, 200 employees or even less than that. The challenges at that point of time wasn't really attracting and retaining talent. Talent got attracted to Fab India for its sense of purpose, integrity of purpose that Fab India was known for. The challenge really is now getting in a certain kind of profile of resources, because there's so much being offered out there by the new startups, by the funded organizations, that salary packages that are being offered are absolutely abnormal. Having said that, we still continue to attract talent that identifies with the core values of Fab India. We have people joining us as the leadership team, probably wanting to take salary cuts because they feel that their sense of purpose gets achieved when they come into Fab India. Right. So that, for us, is a very reassuring fact. But the challenge really, like you very rightly said, is getting in talent at the mid-level, where money is seen to be more attractive.
Right. So, Nishchay, micro, small and medium enterprises often don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge to really imbibe good HR practices. What has your experience been? Are MSMEs now looking at HR practices proactively, or do you think there's still a very long way to go?
What's really happening within the environment is that the competitive landscape itself has changed. So there are external forces that are in fact compelling these MSMEs to embrace and adopt newer practices.
Right.
Number two, I think the MSME segment itself is more ambitious. And the level of aspiration is far higher than it was earlier. Now, what that does do is, of course, with competitive forces on the high and with higher aspiration, a few risks emerge. Risks that I classify as capability risks and capacity risks and cost risks, which all need to be mitigated. Now, one way of mitigating these risks is by, in fact, putting in place, institutionalizing better HR systems and processes that can in fact help deliver greater value. And of course, the inherent belief is that by adopting these practices, there would be a direct impact on financials, both the top line and the bottom line.
Rajneesh, a lot of small businesses are shy of HR practices because they think that, you know, it's a minefield of legislations, of compliance issues. Is it good for a small enterprise to outsource some of these functions if they are unable to manage it?
You know, clearly, we've been in business now for 5 years. The existing SMEs very clearly realize that they need to really streamline their processes, especially the people-related processes. And at the same time, the startups also very clearly, if they are in the business of attracting and retaining talent, they believe that the HR framework needs to be there from day one. I mean, there is a very clear understanding, very clear appreciation, and there is a clear buy-in that from day one they need to have the HR practices. So our experience has been that increasingly people are looking out for companies like ours who can help them out, from putting up the framework, and the framework would mean various policies, the whole statutory thing, right from your various processes and everything to be put in place.
Right.
At the same time, some of them also, after their experience of our initial 3 months, they will say, look, this is a great model and this is very economical and we would love to continue working like this. And so they decide to actually outsource the entire function to, firms like us.
All right. And Basuri, great place to work, of course, needs no introduction. But what are some of those small little steps that small organizations can take to become great places to work, considering they are competing with large players?
What is required to create a great place to work within an MSME is no different from what it takes to create a great workplace in any organization of any size, large or small. So it's essentially about credibility of management. So how to establish that credibility and build trust within the organization. How to enable employees to take pride in what they do every day at work, and how to enable them to enjoy each other's company. So basically the formula for a great workplace is trusting the management team that you work for, taking pride in what you do every day at work and enjoying the company of the people that you work with. If your people, your employees are experiencing all of these things, then it is a great place to work. And this is the formula that holds true for MSMEs as well. In fact, in the national study that we conduct in partnership with ET, where we study multiple numbers of small organizations, and that essentially is defined by the number of people, so less than 500 employees. These organizations are also seen to be more successful where they have people at the heart of the business and are more successful at creating a great workplace. What small steps MSMEs can take is essentially, one, it starts with commitment at the top. Commitment to create a great workplace needs to start with the owner. This should be followed by enabling your people managers and capability building at that level. And last but not the least, to really clarify the business strategy and have a clear value proposition for the kind of people that you are trying to attract. That is essentially what I think works for most organizations among MSMEs that have successfully created a great workplace.
Rajneesh, in your experience, at what stage should a company think of having a full-fledged in-house HR department? Because honestly, there is a cost attached to it.
Correct. Again, our experience says that it's the size of the organization in terms of the headcount that clearly kind of is a typical trigger where the owners would feel that we have had a good support from outside as an outsource model, and at a point of time when they feel it's probably 100 plus 200 people in the organization, that's a time they start really thinking that we need to have a full-time resource, and we typically engage in that kind of a discussion. What typically happens is also there's a very interesting kind of disengagement that happens with an outsourcing company.
Right.
They would rather first get in a junior resource who is a full-time resource. They would retain the expertise from outside at a mid or senior level. So which means the whole model turns into a HR advisory service, right? Because for them, a full-time senior or mid-level is a high-cost item. And they are very, very comfortable keeping that still out with somebody coming in once a week, and they feel that's more than enough for them.
The competition between the startups and traditional manufacturing or service companies is so intense. So how does a traditional manufacturer cope up,
you get the right people on the bus will reach its destination. And you need to believe in that vision, which means you need to believe that having the right people within your organization can make the big difference.
Right.
Now, having said that, there is a real challenge, one of affordability.
Yes.
Which is where I think organizations that have strong value systems or a higher sense of purpose clearly attract the right people. Which it doesn't necessarily only boil down to monetary benefits that appeal to people, but the real cause behind the organization, the vision of the organization.
I completely endorse that.
The the other challenge is that in organizations that have been around for a period of time, there is a sense of or conspiracy of complacency that has set in.
Yes.
And performance necessarily isn't at the optimum level. So how do you address that soon enough? Because every person in the organization needs to carry his or her weight and be a value giver rather than taker.
Right.
And once you address that, you bring in the right set of people from the outside, you address right sizing of an organization, which means you don't have people that are essentially doing nothing. And are actually contributing to the top line and bottom line of the organization. I think these decisions become easier.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, I'm going to take a short break here on Leaders of Tomorrow MSME Dialogues. On the other side, we'll talk about the impact that good HR practices can have on the bottom line of a small company. Stay with us on Leaders of Tomorrow MSME Dialogues. Welcome back to Leaders of Tomorrow on MSME Dialogues. Today we are talking about HR practices for small enterprises. At this point, I'm going to bring in Basuri Datta, who's joining us from Mumbai. Basuri, do you think small companies often view HR practices as just compliance issues and not really something that is to be seen as a culture building exercise?
Yeah, so many of the small enterprises really fall prey to this. That building the business, acquiring customers comes first before you really focus on employees, and oftentimes it is the owner on whom the entire responsibility falls of not only building up the business, ensuring customers, but also then look at the employee piece, which oftentimes takes a backseat. But what we've seen among the best workplaces or good workplaces among this sector of SMEs is that they oftentimes are able to make a clear differentiation between HR practices and employee experience, which is impacted by people practices. I would like to make a quick point here what I mean when I say HR practices and people practices. HR practices, comprise of policies, programs, etc. that you have in place. Most organizations, standard organizations do have them. SMEs also attempt to put some of these in place, but not all of them are great workplaces. The great workplaces among SMEs are the ones that acknowledge that employee experience happens at the interface, at the point of interface between HR practices or processes and where the person or the employee is actually experiencing that. And that is something that SMEs, which are great workplaces, never outsource. So, and this is controlled by the line managers or the leaders of the organization. That is something that the best workplaces among SMEs understand and try to keep it within the folds of the organization and never outsource. The other thing is understanding and comprehending the principle of employee is equal to customer very well. So if you cannot obviously outsource the act of acquiring customers, similarly how can you outsource this particular activity of acquiring employees? It is the people within the organization, particularly in SMEs, the owner of the organization that or the founder team that would understand best as to what kind of people will really this organization need in line with the purpose or the vision that it has put forward for itself.
I would agree that the employee experience is a core, and whether that should be outsourced or not, I have had a mixed experience. I have been involved with certain organizations where they felt a person like me with kind of experience one has had They would like to engage for a certain period of time, get their leadership team oriented in a certain manner. So I would say it's a mixed bag out there. There are people who are looking for people like us.
And there's no one success model.
And there's no
that-
one success. So you can, from outside, also build the employee experience. It is what my experience has been so
Okay.
far. We have impacted companies, and when we go back to those organizations after, they have had in-house HR, people remember that, we did impact the work culture there. So I think it's a mixed bag in my experience. Yeah.
Right. And we often hear from our viewers that, these small companies, they spend a lot of time attracting talent and then training them, spending a lot of time and resources on getting them to learn the job. And then they get poached by MNCs or large players. Elizabeth, was that a challenge that Fabindia faced at any point in time? Of course, not at the leadership level, maybe at lower levels. And how should a small company cope with the attrition challenge?
Well, that's a reality. Fabindia is a wonderful poaching ground. How do we deal with it? We just continue to hire. We just continue to attract people, and we continue to share the sense of purpose, because there will be people who come in and people who go, but there are enough out there who want to stay back because they see a sense of connect with their own principles, their own values, and the organizational values. And that's
But
what
values versus the growth path that maybe a large enterprise can offer you, as an individual.
That's a misnomer that we think that every employee wants to be just, a gypsy. There are enough people out there who are very convinced about what they want out of life and what is the organization that is going to be giving them that sense of purpose. So the reason why we would never outsource the recruitment process is because that's the time when we build that relationship, that build the connect with every aspiring candidate, every aspiring employee. Because who can talk about the culture and the organizational ethos better than people who've experienced it and continue to experience it? So when we're talking to candidates, we're actually telling them about our experiences, and if that's making sense for you, come join us. Be happy to be part of the team. And for us, that has actually held us in good stead because our attrition levels are very low. Because you talk to people, and I think we were also part of the Great Places to Work, and the feedback that we got was our employees connected with the core philosophy of the organization.
Right.
So if that is achieved,
That's
I
wonderful
think,
to hear.
Yeah, if you achieve that, then I think you don't really have to worry about attrition.
There's a lesson for small entrepreneurs. Great advice coming from Elizabeth. Nishchay, tell us, show our small entrepreneurs the business sense in having good HR practices. How do they impact the bottom line?
So, to begin with, MSMEs are blessed with an abundance of loyalty, and I think that doesn't come easily because these organizations have been around and there is a sense of purpose instilled in these employees through the vision of the promoter. That needs to be cashed in on, because as I mentioned that having that is not sufficient. It's important, but it's not sufficient for you to be successful as a business. Having good HR practices and the HR infrastructure itself allows people to be at their best. Essentially, that's what the role of HR is,
Right.
is to tap the potential, inherent potential within an organization. And you create a performance management plan that allows people to in fact perform at their highest level. When you put certain recruitment practices in place, it helps you identify people who are the right people for the organization, whether it be from a standpoint of value alignment or it be from the standpoint of knowledge and skill. When you put a learning and development framework in place, it's to allow to build the right skills and knowledge pool to ensure that in the future you're as successful or even more successful than your competitors.
Right.
Now, who could argue against this logic? Because ultimately, organizations are built by people, and we have structures and technology and process, and the end users the end gainers are all people. Yes. And henceforth, people have understood in MSMEs that, in fact, we must invest in ourselves before we can start investing in marketing and in finance and in technology.
Right. Basuri, one of the reasons why a lot of people don't want to join small enterprises is that you're often expected to be a jack of all trades at a small enterprise because structures are not in place, especially in startups. Functioning is a little haphazard. So do you think organizations need to work upon their structures early on, or do you think employees need to be looking at this as an opportunity to, learn different kinds of functions at one go?
In fact, the small and medium enterprises can actually turn this into a big advantage. And if they are able to successfully position this as a value proposition, I think they will be more successful at attracting good quality talent, and not only attracting them but also retaining them. I think it's very difficult for a very small organization or a small setup to really have a lot of structures and processes in place from day one. And it really evolves, and that's true about most organizations. Now, how you can convert this into an advantage is by really positioning your organization as a place, and this is what most SMEs can do, is that you attract people by telling them that here's an opportunity for you to experience a gamut of roles and responsibilities and have a very varied experience. And so once you enter this organization, you will not only be able to play a certain kind of role, but you will also be able to play many different kinds of roles, experiment, try your hand at different things, and figure out what are those skill baskets that you really excel at. So here's an opportunity, but what happens is that in case of MSMEs, they are not able to position this as a value proposition. If they were to start doing this, in right earnest, I think they will have a lot of success in retaining the right kind of people. Also, I think the conversations need to now change within organizations. There are organizations that are doing that already and quite successfully seeing benefits out of them. Changing the vocabulary, simple things from attrition to retention. Are we able to retain some of the best people that we want to retain within the business? To, instead of growth and development being seen as only vertical growth and development, can we say that growth also means different roles, a variety of roles, and a variety of unique experiences that you've been able to gather within the organization while you were there. So I think if some of this can be taken care of by SMEs, they'll have far more success. But yes, in due course of time, they will have to, think of putting together and institutionalizing proper structures and processes.
We are running out of time here, so I'm going to quickly ask each one of you to give us one best HR practice that is the low-hanging fruit for a small enterprise. What's that one HR practice that any small company can easily implement? And let's keep it short and quick. Rajneesh?
I would say streamlining their whole performance management process is very critical. I think every SME owner wants to see the whole value coming out of the talent. So I think streamlining that will be really an interesting one.
All right. Elizabeth?
While I agree with Rajneesh, I would also like to add that staying connected and continuing to communicate with your people and never outsourcing that activity probably would just ensure that you have a great HR practice.
All right. Nishchay?
I would say clarity. Clarity in terms of expectations and responsibilities for every single individual in the organization itself can unlock a lot of value within the organization.
Okay. Basuri, what's your one best practice for small companies?
I think I would go for envisioning the future, and that can happen by way of defining your entire business strategy in a one-page story format, which can be comprehended by even the people on the periphery of the business.
Thank you, Basuri. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. That's a wrap on today's Leaders of Tomorrow MSME Dialogues. If you need expert advice on any aspect of your business, feel free to get in touch with us and we'll try our best to help you out. Write into us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com or reach us using social media. Just remember to put in the hashtag LOT or just call us on the number flashing on your screen. Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.